clock says it's 3 o'clock and it's time for Fair Housing Coach's Coffee Break Quiz. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Heather Stone, Executive Editor of the Habitat Group, which publishes Fair Housing Coach. And in today's quiz, we're going to give you 5 questions, which will show up as poll questions on your screen, all relating to fair housing and smoking related issues. You'll see the poll question pop up. I think all the answers will be either yes or no, or true or false. You'll be able to answer anonymously, and then I'll share the results. 50% say yes, 50% say no. And then we'll ask our guest speaker what the correct answer is and for an explanation of why it's the correct answer. Before I introduce our guest speaker, I'd just like to let you know that we are using Zoom, but we're not going to use all the features. We won't be using the raise your hand or the Q&A or the chat because that's too much multitasking for me to do. I'm just going to manage the polls and keep up with Doug. But that doesn't mean that I'm not interested in your questions. So if you have any questions relating to today's quiz or any comments, please email me at hstone@thehabitatgroup.com. Now I would like to introduce our guest speaker, Doug Chasick, who is widely known as the apartment doctor. He is former president of the Fair Housing Institute, and he has more than 45 years of investment real estate experience. He's been president or CEO of 5 real estate companies, responsible for portfolios of over 28,000 apartments and more than 8 million square feet of commercial, retail, and industrial properties. Doug is a senior instructor member of the National Apartment Association Education Institute faculty and was a member of the Institute of Real Estate Management National Faculty for 8 years. Doug serves on the board of Fair Housing Coach. Welcome, Doug.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, let me just find my stop share. And here we are. Okay. On to our first poll question. Question number 1. Your community may regulate smoking in common areas, but you could face liability under fair housing law if you adopt policies to ban smoking inside individual units. True or false? Okay, I'll give you a few seconds to answer that. Still getting responses coming in.
Oh, darn, I should have loaded up my Jeopardy music.
We don't want to violate any copyright, though.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm going to end the polling, and I will share the results. Your community may regulate smoking in common areas, but you could face liability under fair housing law if you adopt policies to ban smoking inside individual units. True or false? 23% said true and 77% said false. Doug, what do you say?
And survey says false. People who smoke are not a protected class. And as a matter of fact, more and more communities are adopting smoke-free as a way of both minimizing apartment turnover maintenance as well as not running afoul of fair housing laws.
Okay. So everyone did pretty well on that question.
Yep.
Here is question 2. Could you trigger a fair housing claim for failing to address complaints about secondhand smoke from a resident with a disability? Yes or no? Okay, some answers are still coming in. Time is running out. I'm going to end the polling and I'll share these results. Could you trigger a fair housing claim for failing to address complaints about secondhand smoke from a resident with a disability? 88% of you said yes, and 12% said no. Doug, what do you say?
I think we've got a sharp group this afternoon. The answer is absolutely yes. And it's important to remember that it's not just about somebody who doesn't like smoke or who finds it annoying or distasteful. It's got to rise to the level of disability in order for us to take a particular action. But in any case, we should always address any concern brought to us by a resident.
All right. Okay, let's go to question 3. Your community is in a state that permits the recreational use of marijuana. Do you have to allow residents to smoke marijuana at your community? Yes or no? Okay, a few more seconds, and I'm going to end the polling. All right, your community is in a state that permits the recreational use of marijuana. Do you have to allow residents to smoke marijuana at your community? 7% say yes, and 93% say no. Doug, what do you
That's
think?
it. The answer is no. As long as the federal government considers marijuana to be a Schedule I drug, we do not have to allow its use regardless of what the state says about medicinal or recreational use.
Okay, people did very well on that one. Move on to 4. Okay, your state permits the use of medical marijuana. Your community has a no smoking policy. A resident asks you for permission to smoke medical marijuana in his unit as a reasonable accommodation to his disability. Must you grant his request? Yes or no? So I've forgotten how many states now are allowing marijuana, either recreational or medical. It seems to be expanding pretty rapidly the past couple of years. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. Let's see, your state permits the use of medical marijuana. Your community has a no smoking policy. A resident asks you for permission to smoke medical marijuana in his unit as a reasonable accommodation to his disability. Must you grant his request? 37% said yes, and 63% said no. Doug?
In a word, no. However, I want to make several points about this. First of all, as long as the federal government calls it a Schedule I drug, it is illegal to possess it. We do not have to do anything illegal. However, first of all, let's remember that the majority of people who use medical marijuana don't smoke it. They ingest it as either food or an oil. Second of all, a lot of times things in the employment sector come over to fair housing, and there have been several cases recently where, in spite of the fact that the federal government says it's illegal, EEOC has said that consists of a reasonable accommodation. So I think it's important that we monitor this very closely. Finally, let me just say again what I said earlier, which is one way to minimize these requests is just to have a smoke-free building. That way, regardless of what somebody wants to smoke, the policy is no smoking.
Got it. Okay, we'll move on to question 5. Your property has instituted a no smoking policy, except in designated smoking areas outside. Can you make those areas 25 feet from all windows and entrances so that no smoke travels back into the building without risking a discrimination claim? Yes or no? We're still voting. Okay, I'm going to end this poll. Okay, your property has instituted a no smoking policy except in designated smoking areas outside. Can you make those areas 25 feet from all windows and entrances so that no smoke travels back into the building without risking a discrimination claim? 96% say yes and 4% say no. Doug?
So at the risk of appearing to be a smart aleck, there isn't much we can do in multifamily management that doesn't risk triggering a discrimination claim. In this instance, the answer is absolutely yes. However, please make certain that your jurisdiction doesn't have specific rules. There are some places where it's 50 feet or 100 feet by local ordinance. Again, people who smoke are not a protected class. So what you're doing in terms of this is perfectly okay. And even if it did result in a fair housing claim, chances are you would prevail.
One scenario that might be a problem is if you designate a smoking area, but it's not accessible to everyone. Say it's upstairs or something, you could risk a claim from someone with disabilities who can't access that area. Someone who smokes would want to be able to access it.
That's a great point. That's a great point. It's not just about the smoking, it's also about the accessibility.
Right. Okay, well, thank you so much, Doug, for being our guest speaker. And thank you, everyone, for attending. I'd like to mention that next month we're going to do a full-length hour webinar on how to handle requests for assistance animals. I know that's a hot topic, so we'll be sending out information on when that's going to be shortly. So thank you again, Doug.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
Okay, have a good day.